All right, welcome back to an extended edition of the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. And you know, my first guest in the 6 o'clock hour was Billy Newman from Rutherford, and he's written the historical perspectives on that borough. And my guest in the 7 o'clock hour is the best life coach, Lisa Lieberman-Wang. Lisa Lieberman-Wang is the author of the #1 internationally best-selling book, Fine to Fab. Lisa is a breakthrough expert and the creator of the cutting-edge neuroscience, Neuro Associative Programming, NAP. Quote unquote, she created NAP for you to be able to heal in a short period of time, avoiding years of therapy with a proven model to break through whatever is weighing you down. Using this technology, she has helped thousands of people overcome lifelong emotional challenges of depression, anxiety, stress, self-sabotage, emotional eating, shopping, sexual abuse, and codependency with her proven 7 secrets to FAB. That's capital F, capital A, capital B. Lisa developed Fine to Fab 20 years ago in order to fill a need in her own life. After struggling for years with depression, compulsive overeating, binge eating, bulimia, and self-sabotage, and never finding a solution, despite spending over $500,000 on self-help education, she realized that emotional pain and, quote, stinkin thinkin, unquote, did not have to hold her back any longer. She used the 7 secrets of FAB to reclaim her inner peace and power and has been free for the past 20 years. Now Lisa dedicates her own life to helping other women find the same freedom. Lisa's life mission is to touch more lives than Oprah, but not alone. She believes that by helping, you can transform the lives of the many people you will go on to help. Lisa helps women stop feeling just fine, that's effed up, insecure, that's the I, in, neurotic, and emotional, that's the acronym for FINE, and start feeling fab without blame, shame, or years of therapy. She accomplished this by immersing you in a team environment. She wants women to recognize that we are not alone in our struggles and that we can indeed be free. Lisa has been featured as an expert guest on some of the most popular talk shows, including The Reading Circle with Marc Medley, The Talk on CBS, The Health of It with Dr. Barrett, Curvy Girls on Nuvo TV, and spoken on some of the most prestigious stages, including Harvard University. All right, excellent university. Been there. Lisa takes every opportunity she can to urge all her clients and followers to take care of your mother's daughters and start healing today. As a professional speaker and entrepreneur, she's trained over 100,000 entrepreneurs in the last 20 years on wellness, leadership, sales, and marketing strategies to grow themselves, their businesses, and their minds. She can lighten you in 60 minutes and bring you to breakthrough, going from what's wrong with me to I'm happy and free. Lisa, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones. Lisa, can you hear me? Don't tell me we're going through this again. All right, Lisa, can you hear me? Lisa, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking that is because last week I had some technical difficulty on the telephone, and I was just refusing to go through that again this week.
While you were speaking.
Oh, good. Now, that's a wonderful thing, because that was the case I had last week. Last week I had the situation wherein the guest could hear me, but I couldn't hear her, and she was calling out of North Carolina. So I was sitting here now. Hey, talk about anxiety and stress. I was getting ready to get angry.
I'll help you with that, okay? Let me help you.
Well, I tell you what, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones. And I'm sitting there reading your bio and just fascinated, and then all the various places that you've appeared and the number of people that you've helped and presented in front of and worked with in terms of the entrepreneurs. I'm looking at as seen on CBS, The Talk, ABC News, Nuvo, and now we can add the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. I'm glad we were able to connect because I know you're doing something next week live in the New Jersey area.
Yes, we have an event for 7 Secrets to FAB. It's a transformational journey to a happier you, and it's really all about learning practical strategies to overcome self-sabotage.
So, all right, let's talk a little bit about that, because I see you actually, this was spawned from your own experiences.
Yes.
And so let's kind of roll the tape back and share for the listening audience. We'll work our way through kind of a little bit of what you went through. You don't have to tell all your business unless you want to. But then again, how we can work that into how folks can be helped, because that's really what it's all about, is being able to help somebody else.
Absolutely. It's funny because I know you have a very big audience in the college area as well as adults that have already passed that stage. But for me, my start of a lot of my challenges started while I was in school. That was my foundation. I grew up in a traditional dysfunctional family where everybody said disparaging words, and my dad wanted perfect children. I didn't know there was no such thing, but I did my best to be perfect. And because of that, a lot of things ended up getting me very stressed, just like having challenges with our call or technology. Those things might have stressed me out in the past. Today I'm pretty centered around things, and I really have a different belief system that says everything happens for a reason and it'll all work out. So the energy I put into things that don't work out is nothing near what I used to put into things when I had all these rules and beliefs around how things are supposed to be. I did deal with a lot of perfectionism, and when I looked at where all this stuff came from, it was a very big combination of many things, where my dad was a good man, but he wasn't very good at raising his kids, and he was very strict and verbally abusive. I grew up with nicknames like AH, which meant asshole, and I had turns to disease. Everything I touched turned to shit, and he wasn't very nice about things like that, so I grew up with a very low self-esteem and didn't think very much of myself because I could never do anything right. And then it turned out, despite that, I was very smart. I still am. I didn't get stupid all of a sudden. But it turned out that despite scholarships and honor society and everything else I did, it was one of those situations never measuring up. And my family had a very big tendency towards food. In other words, Dad was overweight, Mom was overweight, and everybody in the family used food to, bring the family together, to feel better, for good times, for bad times. Food was the answer. And by the time I was 18 years old, my mom used to say to me when I was younger, don't ever look like me, because she was obese, and I was always petite. And I said, don't worry, if I ever do, you should kill me. You should shoot me, is what I told her. And it turned out that on the 16th birthday, I was still so petite. I was so excited, like I was actually excited about that. By my 18th birthday, I ended up having a sudden heart attack from ulcers. I was
18?
18.
Wow. A heart attack at 18.
Yeah, they call it a sudden. It was kind of like my potassium got really low. I was stressed out about school, trying to be perfect. I was interning at IBM. I was teaching ballroom at Arthur Murray. I was doing everything you could possibly imagine, and it turned out, and school, and keeping incredible grades. To think at that time I was magna cum laude. It wasn't summa, but it turned out that I had ulcers. I couldn't even keep water in my stomach, and I had lost like 30 pounds in 30 days, got really sick, and ended up in the hospital. And the irony about it is when I got sick, I thought I couldn't control it, and the doctor said to me, you have control over this, which was kind of a good and bad thing. When I was being rolled into the hospital, something happened, Mark, that I never heard before, but maybe it was said before. But as they're rolling me in, my dad says to me, I love you. And that was a huge piece for me because,
right.
Here is a man that today I can tell you I know he loves me, but back then I never would have thought he loved me because he was so strict. And had I not heard that the way I did, I actually ended up, not at the time realizing it, but in hindsight I can tell you, I put an association, we actually call it secondary gain, where I realized if you're sick, they're nice to you. Because all of a sudden I stopped being called names. I was no longer verbally, beaten up in that manner, and it was very different. So I ended up staying sick for 13 years.
So initially, because as I was listening to you, it sounds like you were put under a lot of pressure to be excellent. In your parents' mind, did they feel like they were being mean, or did they feel like they just wanted the best child that they could have? And then as you're taking in what they were saying, put pressure on you that now caused you to be sick. And in other words, do you think they were trying to harm you intentionally, or were their intentions good?
Well, first, my mom was not like that. My mom was happy with anything I did.
Okay.
My dad wanted perfect children, and I know today it was truly pure, genuine good intentions of thinking that's how you raise kids.
Right.
That was really what it was. And his parents came from Russia, after the war. They were very strict. They had a lot of rules. And you grow up as a byproduct of your parents.
Absolutely.
And I think that was a big piece of it. And it wasn't that they were awful. It's just that they really wanted successful children, and they thought this is the way you do it. And my interpretation of it was very different than my brother's. Like, I turned out, the stress got to me, and I didn't deal with things as well as he did. And for me, but I also, as a boy, he didn't have all the rules that I was given at the house.
As I'm listening to it, because it wasn't to that extreme, but the reaction to it was very similar between me and my sister, because my sister was always kind of like the woe is me. She always felt like if anything bad was going to happen, it was going to be to her, and everything great was going to happen for me. And she always had this whole notion that my parents loved me better than her, and that was not true in any sort of fashion. It's just that in her mind it was. So she kind of felt that same way, and my parents kind of did the same. They wanted the best in terms of who their children were, because I work in the school system and I deal with kids every day, and I constantly share with them that there's no parent worth their salt that doesn't want their children to do better than they did. So I don't know how much of that was driving how they were now putting this pressure on you, but it's interesting in terms of what it manifested in, and then what you were able to do with it, because even though you went through that, you were able to turn that from something negative into something positive.
Without a doubt. But it did take me a while, and I do want to put that out, because at the beginning, I went through this thing as a victim.
Right.
And I'd say as a victim, meaning that, like you said with your sister, woe is me. Like, what happened to me? This is awful, and why is everyone, generalizations, everyone, right, is picking on me. And the fact is, my mother was very kind and didn't know how to deal with it. She did her best, and not that she was perfect. She wasn't there all the time either. She had 2 businesses and was out 6 days a week from 7 in the morning to 8 at night, so I was a latchkey child. Like, some of the guidance would have been nice, but at the same token, because they were so successful, my father was a VP and quality control, they were very successful. Right. They supported us very nicely. We were taken care of. We didn't lack for anything, yet emotionally, we lacked for a lot.
Well, and that's not surprising of me either, and probably is more typical. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, in terms of parents wanting their children to be better than them, that bar gets raised even higher if your parent is successful. Now, it's one thing if your parent is, for the most part, for lack of a better term, not successful, or a bum, or just feel in their life they didn't do what they needed to do. It's another thing to be the child of now someone who is has an office, or an officer in a corporation, or it's kind of like they call PKs, preacher's kids. The expectation is totally different for someone who is like successful of their children, because the expectation is, well, if your dad's a VP, we expect this out of you.
Well, you're right in that area, because in my family, I remember growing up, and some of my friends in school would say, what are you going to do after high school? I was like, you mean you have a choice? I mean, we're going to college. When they said I had control over this thing with the ulcers, I ended up using food as a means to make myself feel better, as a vehicle. I ended up getting into binge-eating, compulsive overeating. I became bulimic, and that became really my source for everything. It was my best friend, my confidence. Food was my go-to for everything. And unfortunately, at the beginning, you think, oh, well, this is okay. It's just, you get that feeling, you binge, you feel okay for a moment, you get rid of it, you feel like you're getting rid of all your troubles. But what people don't realize is the physical, not just emotional, the physical damage you do to your body. And I was physically and emotionally drained. My potassium was so low, is why I ended up in the hospital, because, didn't have enough in me. My nutrients had gotten down. My electrolytes were messed up. Because of the purging and stuff, even my intestines didn't know the difference of which direction to go with food, and I never put my finger down my throat to throw up. So many people think, oh, she's probably doing it to be skinny. I need to tell you that I went from 125 pounds to 95 pounds. Even my highest weight wasn't ridiculous. I'm only 5'2.5". So people would say, oh, she must have been heavy. No, I wasn't obese by any means, as even my highest, but 95 pounds, I lost every bit of my shape and my looks, and And then I actually had a lot of body dysmorphia. I had no idea how bad I looked. I actually thought I looked good. Crazy, right? I did. Now, this is going back, 20, 30 years ago, and I haven't done this to myself for 20 years. And, today I'm 5'2", I'm 113, 5'2" and a half, 113 pounds. I'm healthy. I look great. I'm happy with who I am. But the challenge was, when we're not happy in our environment, we're looking for something to hold on to.
Right. And I must agree with you in terms of looking at your pictures on your website. I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you.
So, to go through all of that, and I know it's like in the bio as we were reading, it said you went through countless self-help books and spent countless dollars on trying to now get, if for lack of a better word, fixed or to get right. And then you kind of came to the realization, you know what, I'm going to have to do this for myself.
Yes. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, that's the answer. My parents, in their effort to help, sent me to therapy. I was institutionalized. I was at hospitals. I was put into eating disorder units. What people didn't know, and it's kind of the way this is even unfolding, is a lot of the stuff they were thinking, this is, my upbringing. A lot of people blame just my dad, and the truth is it wasn't him. The truth is what happened is Dad was very strict, and so strict that he didn't want me to date. And my mom, being more lenient, trying to let us have more of a childhood, said, I would do things as long as you tell me. So she thought she'd be protecting us. Well, I ended up being 16 years old, dating a boy that was 18. He came to pick me up at my home. My parents weren't there because they usually weren't. They were working, right? And it turned out he took advantage of me.
So now that's something else to add to the puzzle.
You got it. And most people, it took them actually 4 years before I told anybody that piece, because when it did happen, I said something to somebody, and they said to me, "Don't tell your father; he'll be angry at you." So
he'd be angry at you and probably want to kill him. But in any event,
right.
In those cases, because a significant number, particularly my female guests who are authors, have been molested or taken advantage of somewhere along the way, and that's typically the line. I felt like it was my fault.
Well, let me tell you the stats right now. 85% of women have been in that position in the world.
Yes.
And what we don't realize is, I have to just say too, which is kind of what people don't realize as well. There's a lot of men that have been in similar situations, but it's not talked about because it's not cool.
Of course. Oh, that's even worse.
And yeah, it is. And it's very scary with that respect, because it could have been by somebody, and usually these things happen by somebody they know that can get close enough to them. And I started working with men last year because a lot of these men started coming out and saying, "Lisa, it's not just women. Men need help." And I said, "Well, if I help enough women, aren't I helping you guys?" And they said, "No, you need to help men too." So I do work with men now as well, Mark. But when I started, it was only about women. I kept thinking, women need this, because I went through the hospitalizations, and then I went through therapy. I went through self-help. And I was introduced into personal development world, and I met people like Deepak Chopra and Tony Robbins, and, and all these other amazing Guru Singh and Dr. Bandler and Grinder and Robert Dilson, all these incredible people that gave me a different perspective on things, which is really what I needed. Because at the time, I did think I was broken, because my dad was looking to fix me all the time. And I'm like, "I'm not broken." I'm not broken. And the irony about this is that I didn't know how to stop. And I went to OA, Overeaters Anonymous. I went to SA for sexually abused people. And, it was interesting that, they keep saying the number one thing was, to admit you're powerless over whatever you're dealing with. And quite honestly, as a very strong woman as I am, being powerless doesn't work for me. Powerless means you get raped again, That wasn't the theory, and yet that's what they wanted us to learn. And I had to get out of that arena to say, okay, this is not working. I'm not powerless. I just need to know how to change these emotions, because what I'm doing isn't working. And
absolutely.
That was the big thing. And the first is, to come to terms. And when I wrote my 7 Secrets to FAB, and I'll make sure it's available to anybody who's listening, because I think it's important that even if you get the 7 Secrets, and you can easily download that, if you get the book, even better. But the 7 Secrets of FAB was really based on the principles I had to take to overcome self-sabotage.
Absolutely. I can definitely relate to what you said. And especially, well, two of the ones, the gurus that you just named off, I've read most of their work. Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra, I've read a significant number of their work. So I can certainly relate to where you come to in terms of their message. And in terms of, you were talking earlier about men, and I'm gonna share some information with the listening audience, and then we're gonna come back to the interview. But one of the questions I intended to ask you was in terms of the self-esteem issues. Did you come across men, or because I know it's out there, and like you said, men generally are not going to admit that because that's just not manly. I mean, but my question was going to be: do you find there's about as much self-esteem issues with males as they are with females? My guess is probably yes, but then again, most of the time all you hear about are the females that have self-esteem issues. So I'm going to share some information. I'm going to let you think about that for a minute and share some information with the audience, and then we shall resume our interview.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try.
Should I make a CD anymore?
Trying to break into the music and entertainment biz? Wondering how the business works? Wondering how guys like Elton John and MC Hammer go bankrupt?
Why am I not making any cash?
Tune in to WP Brave New Radio every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Hang with the university's music business faculty hosts, me, Steve Marconi.
And me, Dave Phil. Plus, we'll have industry guests and students from the music management program.
How do I get gigs down at the shore?
Call in with your questions and hear the latest in industry happenings.
How do I get my music on iTunes?
How do I get on a tour? It's Music Biz 101 and more every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Only on WP Brave New Radio.
Your secretary's got our checks, right?
Mine's direct deposit, I think.
You're listening to an extended version of the Reading Circle. This is what I call a Reading Circle doubleheader. That's on the mornings where I have two guests, and every now and again, we might have a Reading Circle triple header. That's when I have three guests, and then sometimes in the 3-hour time period, I might have no guests where I go into the gospel music format. But the issues that we're talking about with my guest right now, Lisa Lieberman-Wang, is so important and so prevalent that for those of you in the listening audience, you know the drill. I really do this morning need you to get on all your social media sites. I need you to text somebody, tweet somebody, Instagram somebody, Facebook somebody, LinkedIn somebody, whatever you're on, whatever all the other names are, Spotify, whatever they are. I need you to get on there, and I need you to tell them to tune in now on their computers, wherever they are in the world, to gobrave.org. Go onto the site. There's an orange button that says Listen Now. Have them do that, because the information that we're talking about is so important in terms of why people in many instances act the way they act, and we have no clue. They have no clue of the anger and the anxiety and the stress that's on the inside of a person that may be driving their actions. And that's what Lisa deals with, because she's not telling folks what she thinks. She's telling folks what she knows based on her experiences. And because of her experiences, she's now seeking to help others get through theirs. And right before I shared the information with you, I asked the question in terms of males and self-esteem, because generally whenever we hear self-esteem issues, we automatically think of females. And she had started talking about men coming to her saying men need help too, and I picked up on that. So Lisa, let's talk a little bit about that. What about the men?
Well, you're cool to be able to express these feelings. You don't hear it most of the time. So you'll end up showing up in other areas where a woman might be so focused on her size of thinking she's too fat, and body image issues come in. For men, it can be, the issues of low self-esteem come through also self-worth of income, accomplishments, as well as their figure and how they look. And a lot of people don't understand this. There are people that are very heavy out there, whether it's men or women, and there becomes a point where they say, well, I'm never going to be skinny anyway, what the F, and they just go and do what they want to do just to feel better. And in every human person, which we are humans, it's, at the end of the day, I love how Dr. Virginia Satir said, we always return to familiar. So no matter what, if food is the answer to feel better now, then they're going to return to food. If alcohol is the answer for someone to feel better, then they're going to return to that. They go back to what's familiar. And although they don't want to be there, they don't have the tools and resources to interrupt the patterns to replace it with something else. There is no way anybody can change something without replacing it with something that's more fulfilling.
Correct.
And the irony about it is I had a couple of people that actually had wrote testimonies of praise for my book when it came out, and several of them, and that were men, were people back 4 years ago who were saying to me when this was, actually it's almost 5 years ago when it was a thought of me doing this. I've been serving for 20 years and helping people, but I just wrote the book in December 2012. It was published and hit #1. And they said to me, Lisa, men need this too. And I started hearing all the stories. And I was surprised that they were concerned about their body, about how they looked, and then all the other issues about, what they thought they were supposed to accomplish and living up to a standard. If they're people, they're people. I have one client who, I thought was very successful, doing well, and what I ended up finding out underlying is there were so many issues of anger and so many rules in his life that the whole family was always up in arms and felt like they were in the military because he had rules he had to follow growing up that he imposed them all on his family.
And see, that's what I was thinking in terms of how do the individual issues impact how they relate to other people?
Oh, huge. Yes. It's our model of the world. It's how we see things. Where, I always think of the example of we go to the circus together, and Mark, you love circuses. You go, this is great, this is amazing, I love this. And then I might have had an experience with a clown, and that clown scared me. And because I was scared of clowns, I go to the circus, and I'm thinking, I just can't wait to get out of here. And you're there saying, this is the best in the world. Isn't this awesome, Lisa? And I'm saying, no.
That's right.
This is what happens. See, it's all based on a representation system of what we remember. And if you think about it as if the best way I can explain to people how your brain works is that our brain has 3 levels. We have our conscious, we have our subconscious, and our unconscious mind. And 55% of our beliefs were formed by the time we're 5 years old. Think about this. By the time you're 5 years old, 55% of what you believe to be true was formed by well-meaning guardians and parents. Okay? So now 45% of what you believe has been put there by you. Realize you couldn't believe in anything, but we believed in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and, the Tooth Fairy. So what else did they lie to us about? Because if we believed in that and then we get older and we realize, well, that's not true, well, the question becomes, well, what is true, right?
Correct.
This is what happens. Now, this is the basis of our unconscious. This has been instilled in us so long it becomes an automatic reflex to believe what we believe. It becomes something we hold very true. Now, beliefs, I always look at the word belief, and if you see in the middle of the word, there's the word lie, L-I-E, right? B-E, and then B, lie.
Correct.
Well, it's the lies we tell ourselves, and we need to hold to, and we base our values on these. So now you have people that believe certain things, like I believed I needed to be perfect. Okay, let's use that example. So in order to be perfect, I had to have great grades.
Right.
So if I came home with an 85, I was already failing because it wasn't 100. Where somebody else might have had values saying, if I'm over 65, I'm doing awesome.
Exactly. That's right.
Right? So it was a very big difference. And the idea is that because of these beliefs and what we hold to be true, we're going to actually create our whole lifestyle and what we believe, and we're going to see the world differently. So to me, somebody would say, oh, you did good. I'm thinking, oh, my God, I'm afraid to go home.
Right.
I failed.
Yeah, it's interesting you would say that because years ago I taught a diversity course, and we would always talk about stereotyping. And we in that curriculum, we would always say there is no such thing as a good stereotype. And in every shop or workshop I would do around the country, someone would invariably say, but what about the Asians where the stereotype is like all of them are A students. All of them are, they excel academically, so forth and so on. And our pushback would always be they have one of the highest suicide rates of any group because of that. So there's no such thing as a good stereotype because they're doing exactly what you just want. They're stressing out over I didn't get the A, so therefore I'm a failure.
Well, it's funny because my husband, I'm Jewish, and I married my husband who's Chinese.
I kind of figured that based on the hyphenation.
The kids could do, and it was really just them wanting the best for us. But I was going to even say about how our thinking works is realize that because of the training and upbringing we have, we're so ingrained within our unconscious mind that what happens is even consciously you could know better about something not being good for you, or let me just use food for example. Like I know that going to binge and purge is not good for me, but at the time, my conscious mind would justify why it would be okay. So my unconscious knew it wasn't right, but my unconscious knew that I had a hard time with it, that it was not okay for me. My conscious mind was like the little devil that said, cake. Cake is good, Mark. You know why? Because chocolate is an antioxidant.
Right.
And it has eggs in it. So that's good. That's protein, right? I mean, this is how
it's rationalizing it. Yes.
This is how our brain will work to make something that's not good for us okay.
Right.
And what we need to understand is that we need to be able to break that barrier of the conscious-unconscious mind, because our motivation actually will drive us to make these decisions that will either be fulfilling or unfulfilling. And a lot of the stuff I do, as a matter of fact, on our day that we do on October 3rd when we have this one-day event for the 7 Secrets to FAB, we're going to be having people physically, through exercises and experimental type things, be able to change their state and change some of the emotions that they've been holding on to that they're hurting themselves with, because unless you do something dramatic to interrupt it, you're going to continue to almost have the same roadmap to keep getting there.
Absolutely. It's a pattern interrupt. Absolutely.
That's exactly what it is.
So in terms of, I know during the bio, when I was reading your bio, I touched on the acronyms, but I want you to go back through them for the listening audience so that they really understand when you say from going from FINE to FAB. Because I'm looking at the FAB is finally authentic breakthrough. That's the FAB. Go back through the FINE again. In terms of the F-I. I know the F was F'd up. I remember that one. It was I, N, and the E. Go through the entire acronyms, both of them, and then we're going to work through.
To. For me, it was how I used to feel when I was in my dis-ease with myself. Some people call it a disease. I think it was a dis-ease. What I used to say, people go, "How are you doing, Lisa?" I'd say, "I'm fine." And they say, "How are you doing, Lisa?" I'd say, "Fine." And then finally I got so upset with somebody, and I said, "I'm fine. I'm fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Leave me the hell alone." That was my answer.
There you go.
That was my answer. I'm fine. And FAB, I realized later on, would be a much better alternative. And FAB was actually fabulous, awesome, beautiful. And it is finally authentic breakthroughs, but it's fabulous, awesome, beautiful.
I like them both. Both of them work.
Was what it is. And then when I started working with men, they were like, "Well, I don't know about feeling beautiful, but we went from fabulous, awesome beings." So
they all work.
We made it generic for them so that they didn't feel like we were fitting them into a girl's mold here.
No, we don't want to be unmanly. We understand. So, okay, so all of them work. All of the acronyms work because they're leading us to the same thing.
Yes.
We're trying to move from being jacked up and messed up and screwed up to moving away from that. And right before I asked you that question, you were saying this whole notion of the pattern interrupt. How does one, or what are some of the tricks one can go about to make this pattern interrupt occur?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is that we don't realize the self-talk we have is so important because our body hears everything we say. If you're saying every day, "I'm ugly, I'm not stupid, I'm not smart, I'm fat, all these other things," the body hears you, and your unconscious is really smart. And what it does is anything that it sees you do repetitively and it hears you say consistently, it finds ways to prove to you it's true.
Correct.
So now, if you're over there saying these unfulfilling, things, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the way to overcome it is the first thing I suggest all my clients do is they start with 50 I ams a day, 50 self-affirming affirmations a day. And I say 50 because at least we're going to be taking care of 2.5 of your bad things you say to yourself, on the very least. And then if we start conditioning ourselves to say positive things, we won't be saying the negative. And I remember somebody once said to me, "Well, I don't tell other people this." I go, "Yeah, but how many times do you tell yourself that?" And they said, "Well, millions." I was like, "Okay, that's my point. We need to stop telling ourselves what's wrong with us, and we need to start telling ourselves what's right." The biggest challenge, like I have my clients, they'll sit, I tell them, in front of the mirror in your birthday suit, Mark, not all dressed when you think you look great.
Right.
In your birthday suit, to get in front of the mirror and say, I am fabulous, I'm awesome, I'm beautiful, I'm kind, I'm loving, I'm nurturing, I'm amazing. And have
that's
really
right.
a lot of fun with it and use your whole body and get into it. And then the cool thing is that after a while, you're going to start believing it. I mean, I say it so often, my husband believes it.
Absolutely.
But the piece that's really critical of this is that to make it a habit, like you wash your hair, you brush your teeth, to do it every single day, that's a big piece of it, because now you're going to be programming your mind for what's good versus what's wrong. The other thing is that anybody who's in dis-ease with themselves is not going to do good things for themselves for the person they don't like.
Correct.
And if we don't come to the point where we like ourselves, let alone love ourselves, I like to teach people to fly. And flying is first love yourself.
Correct.
And if we don't learn to fly, what will happen is we'll say, oh, I'll do that when. I'll do that when I lose 10 pounds. I'll do that when, I get a promotion. I'll do that when I make more money. I'll do that when. And if we don't get to the point where when is now, that the actions have to happen now so the whens actually happen, or they never will. And 5, 10, 20 years will go by and they'll never achieve what they wanted because they had a condition of when.
You were talking about the subconscious. The subconscious doesn't recognize words like not or don't or anything.
Correct.
It focuses on whatever you say the action is.
Absolutely.
So whenever you're thinking, you're saying, I don't want this, I don't want that, it's not focusing on that. It's focusing on whatever it is you're saying you don't want.
Well,
and that's
if you say, yep,
right.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you say don't, it doesn't hear it.
Right.
So if I say don't eat that cake, all my unconscious hears is eat that cake.
Correct. That's a perfect example. I mean, because that's what I was trying to get across. The subconscious doesn't hear the don't.
It doesn't hear shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't,
Correct.
Why, don't, if. It doesn't hear those words, and the only time those words are really good is if I'm using it for persuasion. It can work. If I say to my kids, don't come home before 11, then I have a shot they'll come home before 11. But other than that, it's not a good word to be using for us on an everyday basis if we want to be able to create change for ourselves. It's not empowering.
So as you're going through these various workshops with folks, in terms of, like you're having one next Saturday, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that before you leave the air in 45 minutes or so, a half hour, however long we're on the air. We'll talk a little bit more about that event as well. It's one of the reasons I was glad to have you on here this week, so that you can promote that. But secondly, how in terms of reactions whenever we're talking, because I'm a firm believer in this. That's why I'm right there with you. I understand. I've read Tony, I've read Deepak, I've read Stephen Covey, I've read, just on down the line. He just passed, Stephen passed away a few months ago, and now the other one that I read, Wayne Dyer, he passed away a couple of weeks ago.
I love Wayne.
Yes.
I met him many times.
Oh my goodness. So all these folks I've read extensively, and that's why. But what do you tell folks who's think this is a bunch of hooey?
Oh man. Well, you know what? I'm not in the convincing business. I've never been in that business. So I always look at it as facts. If what you're doing is working, awesome, keep doing. If what you're doing is not working, and you're not living a happy life, and you're not fulfilled, and you don't feel at peace, then you need to find something else. And my dad used to say to me when I was sick and I was in therapy, say, if I ever needed therapy, they should shoot me. And I was like, well, there you go. It's like he didn't believe in it, so I felt like there was another failure for me as well. And I'll agree. There are pieces of therapy that are good, but to me, I know too many people that are depressed and still in therapy and it's not working, that I have to say, let's take proof. And I'm more science-based. Prove to me that something is good, and I'll support it. So for people who say that stuff's hokey, well, I can tell you that some of the greatest athletes and minds in the world follow the principles, so they can say that they're hokey.
No,
right?
Well, I tell you what, in terms of Robbins and his whole notion of watching someone and modeling what they do, I know for a fact that works even in the silliest of things. Because one of the things, I'm like a big kid, so whenever I go home from doing my employment, I have all kinds of video games and simulators on my computer. And one of them is a truck driving simulator. Literally where you're driving the cab and the truck and you have to hook up the trailer, so forth and so on. So when I first got on the simulator, I was struggling with that backwards concept in terms of when you back the trailer up and so forth and so on, which way the steering wheels have to go and all that. Because on a car it's real easy, but with a truck trailer it's totally different. But I literally, and the reason I'm sharing the story is I started watching truck drivers do it in real life. And I started watching which way they were turning the steering, which way the wheels were going, and how did that impact it, which way the trailer would go. And I applied those same things now on the computer as I'm driving on it. And sure enough, I'm now able to back a trailer into the spot perfectly. But I'm saying all I'd say that came from Tony Robbins' whole thing was, if there's anything that you want to do, go watch an expert do it and model it. And there are other things from Deepak and from Wayne and from Steve Covey and all these other gurus.
And
Exactly. They work. And so for those that say it's a bunch of hooey, because I'm not necessarily into convincing, but I can just tell you it works for me. And it's worked in some of the simplest, like the example I just gave you, something that's really insignificant, but it was significant for me. So I'm saying all that to say, if you're someone who is depressed or negative or have had some really bad experiences and you're trying to change your game or reframe your mind, you definitely need to hear these things that Lisa is talking about because they do work.
Oh, they certainly do. And, I want to address that because, by the time I was 30 years old, in my 20s, I was already on 13 prescriptions a day, Mark. I was on prescriptions for antidepressants, anxiety, high blood pressure, asthma, allergies, you name it, and I was still sick. I still had high blood pressure. I still had stress. I didn't know how to change that situation. Today I can do it just through breathing. I can change anything, but I didn't know how back then. And I lived in a state of really anxiety because I was always afraid. I dealt with, like I said, we started at the beginning, a lot of shame and blame.
Right.
And when I lived there, it was never a healthy place to be, but it was the place that was familiar, and it's where I went to. And the irony is that, the doctor I went to also put my mom on tons of drugs and everybody else. It was kind of like I used to say he was a drug pusher, and today I'm not on any drugs, which is really wonderful, but back then, I was diagnosed with depression and all these other things. Now, I'm going to say something that anybody with depression is not going to be happy about, but please listen to what I'm saying. Most of the time, the people that are depressed are doing depression. And what I mean by doing depression is you're not depressed as much as you're doing an activity that makes you feel depressed. And the truth has been in the stats that are out there and the information that's been researched is they did a study, and the UK, they have managed care. It means that they pay for everybody's health insurance. And they did a study, and they realized that Prozac and all these other drugs out there that were people on, they said that people who were they studied medium, mild, and severely depressed. And they found that all these people on antidepressants, only the people that were severely depressed got any noticeable results with antidepressants. Okay, so what they do, they stop dispensing antidepressants unless you're severely depressed because it wasn't working. Now think about it. How many people do you know that are on antidepressants and still depressed? Lots.
No, it's true and I'm listening to you, and it's just what's coming to mind in this whole chat we're having is the power of the mind and the power of belief. And I'm actually quoting you because as we go through the interview, I'm on my Hootsuite, and some things that my guests say, a lot of times I will go in there and quote them in there on Twitter. So I said most of the time people who are depressed are doing depression. How much of that is because being the victim gets you a lot of attention?
Well, oh my God, it's a big part. But here's what I want to add before I answer that, Mark, is that in the U.S., there's over 25 million people reported going to the doctor saying that they are depressed, and 90% are leaving with an antidepressant. I just want to put that out. This is how bad it is here.
I can imagine because that's a whole nother show when I do the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. That they're helping, they're driving some of that. So that's a whole nother show. But continue.
Is doing depression, and they don't feel good. They're actually connecting with themselves. So the very thing every human being wants is to have loving connection. And although we might not admit it, we'll settle for connection, which means connection to ourselves.
Right.
And connection to ourselves can show up in a lot of different ways. It can show up in somebody being an incredible musician who just loves their art and they connect that way to themselves, right? It can also show up in an ism where a dis-ease with themselves, where I used food as my way to connect with myself. People use alcohol or gambling or other things, vehicles that they go to connect. Depression is a vehicle we use to connect with ourselves because it's impossible to be doing depression when you're out there serving other people, when you're out there making a difference, when
Correct.
It's not about you. Depression is a very selfish state of mind, and the only way to feel depressed is to be self-absorbed, period. So now they're depressed and everybody feels bad for them. Now that secondary gain is, oh, I'm getting attention. Lisa's depressed. Oh, what are we going to do to help Lisa? Now I'm getting the very thing I wanted more than anything else at the very beginning. Is I just wanted love and attention, but I found the only way for me to get it is to do depression. So now I'm stuck in a whole quandary here because I need to do depression, or some people think they're depressed, but I know today it's doing it. They will be depressed, so they get the attention, but really what they wanted is the attention. They just used the depression to get it.
And I'm glad you made the distinction between being depressed and doing depression, because they are two distinct different things that most people probably, after hearing this, had never thought of.
No, I never thought of it for years. I mean, I was in therapy for years saying I'm depressed, and anything we attach I am to, we become, and boy, was I good at that. And one thing I'm going to share with you, too, is, I will put out that it was actually Tony Robbins who helped me 21 years ago. And I ended up going to one of his events because a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Debbie Turner, had said to me, when she knew I was going through all this, and, 13 years, 6 hospitalizations, in and out patient, all the stuff it's going through, she said, you need help, and Tony's going to be in town. And I said, who's Tony? I didn't know him back then.
Right.
And I ended up going to an event. She said, oh, he's having a fire walk. I go, fire walk?
I was going to say, did you walk the course?
Oh, sweetheart, I've done it 14 times already. So I've already done it 14 times, and I've done so many other things. So I've actually, not only did Tony help me back then, he was looking for suicidal people, and hearing me now, you wouldn't suspect this, but I ended up winning for being the most challenged person in the room of 2,500 at that time, and he ended up working with me and totally helped me in a big way to start me on a different path, because I might have been one of those non-believers, that you said how you convince somebody.
Exactly.
I was one of those non-believers because I wasn't open to untraditional means. I'd already tried what I thought, quote-unquote, was everything, until I saw that it wasn't everything. It was impossible that I tried everything. This was one more thing I needed to do. And in doing that, it was the start of my journey. Now, was it perfect? No. I mean, a matter of fact, I got to know Tony really well, and I've been working with him for 21 years now. I'm a senior leader for him. My husband and I became platinum partners with him. So I get to stay in the environment and continue to grow, and I think every one of us, when we stop growing, we're dead.
Absolutely.
So, I've been around it for a very long time, and I've had the pleasure of helping thousands of people to walk through the same path I did. I think at some point, though, I thought I was terminally unique, and at the end of the day, my life became unmanageable, and I needed to take another spin, and it was about taking different ways of doing things, and I eventually did, thank God,
I know, that's right. Well, I tell you what, we're in the 8 o'clock hour. I need to change over into that hour, so if you hang on with me momentarily, I need to give folks the weather and do what we call top of the hour. I'm going to do that, and we're going to continue on with this chat. Folks in the listening audience, I have been on my social media sites because this is an interview, because the number of people who are in the predicaments and situations that Lisa are talking about, I don't think she'll ever run out of work based on the number of folks who are in this predicament. Because, and the thing is, for those of us who interact with people, you never know, because for the most part, they're not shouting that from the rooftops. They're not shouting their inner feelings, whatever it is, from the rooftops, and many of us are very good at masking those things, but they come out in other ways, such as she says is the overeating or the oversexing or the overdrinking or the over whatever. A lot of things that we may think, what's wrong with that person? We have no clue. So let somebody know that Lisa's on the air. We're talking about these various issues and how you can overcome them. And before it's over, we're going to let you know how you can get in touch with Lisa if you want her to work directly with you. So let somebody know, share the information. It's not 6 o'clock in the morning now. It's everybody at this point ought to be kind of up and about, those who are not the early risers. So tell them to tune in. Tell them to go to the website, gobrave.org, click on the Listen Now button to make sure the speakers are on the computer, and they will learn something, or at least it may ignite something that could put them on a totally different path.
WP New Jersey.
Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network. Brave New Radio. Brave New Radio. Give us your tired, your poor, your hungry, your rockers, your punks, your freaks, your geeks, your Greeks, your party animals, your gangsters, your commuters, your residents, your students, your alums, your lawyers, your truckers, your calls, your tweets. And we'll give you rock, classic, indie, punk, alternative, easy, hard, raps, rhymes, mixes, and drops. We'll give you kick-ass music because we're WPSC 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio. Sound good?
Straight from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center, here's your local forecast.
We have creeped up to 58 degrees, on our way to a high of 72, a mix of clouds and sun. And then tonight, partly to mostly cloudy, dropping to a low of 50. And then on tomorrow, Sunday, partly cloudy skies, again high of 72, low of 57. It's going to be mostly cloudy tomorrow night. And then on Monday, mostly cloudy with some showers, 40% chance of rain during the day, 10% chance of rain during the evening, 75 as a high, 61 as a low. On Tuesday, widely scattered showers and thunderstorms possible early, 30% chance of rain during the day, 20% chance of rain during the night, a few clouds, high of 78, low of 59. Rounding out our forecast here, partly cloudy, high of 72, low of 51. The weather is brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. I hope you have been with me since 6 o'clock. My guest in the 6 o'clock hour was Billy Newman, and we talked about the history of Rutherford, New Jersey. And then my guest in the 7 o'clock hour is Lisa Lieberman-Wang. And we're talking about a host of issues, mainly stemming from some sort of self-esteem issues or something that has gone on in a person's history that may be driving their actions. And a lot of them are based around low self-esteem that was brought upon by some other events. And Lisa helps people work through that based on her experiences. Because I'm looking here on the website, how to program or how you program yourself for success or failure, how to deal with your feelings, why 90%, I really like that one because I'm not one who makes New Year's resolutions, why 92% of New Year's resolutions fail. Surviving the holiday season without putting on extra pounds, how to not overeat during the holidays, wake up to opportunity. In other words, she's dealing with issues that every one of us, just as being human beings, deal with one way or the other. So, Lisa, let's continue to talk in terms of some of the things people can do to move out of their negative state into a more positive state.
First off, I want to say is we have to divorce all of our negative friends.
Yes, yes.
Let's start there because a lot of times misery doesn't love misery. I mean, people think misery loves company, but misery loves misery.
Right.
So,
there's another quote.
So we definitely need to divorce some of our friends that are caught up in that disempowering world and will always find something wrong. And I say that with a smile, but I do mean it. I mean, I had a lot of friends that were the negative Annies and stuff like that, and I realized they weren't serving me, nor was I serving them, and we fed off each other. I have a client right now who is so smart, I mean, amazing smart, but yet in relationships, because of the advice she's taking of her friends, she ends up breaking off with her guy because she gets jealous or suspicious of things that are not even anywhere near accurate, but she puts herself in that place and believes it, and because of the people around her. So the first thing is really to look at your friends, and if you're the one that's negative, you need to divorce your attitude and start picking a new one.
Absolutely.
That's a big piece. I think another piece that's really important is to start, like I said, with the positive affirmations every day and read positive things. Put things in your mind that are going to fulfill you and lift you up, not things that are going to knock you down. I've actually, when I was younger, I'm saying younger because I'm 52 now, and I'm happy to say that. I feel like when I start looking my age, Mark, I'll stop telling people, okay?
Well, we're in the same category. I'm 53, and I always say there's no shame in my game. I said, I'm just glad to be alive.
Me too, me too.
Glad to still be here.
It's experience and wisdom, yay. But what I pretty much also believe is that, you know, what you put in your mind is what's important, and they say garbage in, garbage out. But
yes.
It's the opposite. It's garbage in, garbage stays in. So you put it in, it's going to be there. You want to make sure you're putting good things in your mind. And I'm a huge proponent in personal development. I've read everybody, whether it's Brene Brown or any of these other, you know, all these incredible books out there. And I just went blank on the names. I can see them, Joyce Myers or...
That's right,
or,
Joyce is
these
one.
Others. I mean, there's so many out there. I love Joel Osteen, and I'm Jewish,
yep.
and I'm telling you things I love.
Absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because at the end of the day, they're all, because there's a blog post I'm for the last few weeks has been on my mind to write, and now that the Pope visited, I'm going to go ahead and write it. But it's all this notion of, and even though it's going to be titled "Are Christians Delusional?" it really kind of fits any of our faiths. And the whole upshot of the blog is going to be, well, if we all are delusional, what's wrong with it? Because the delusion is always about building somebody else up. The delusion is about love. The delusion is about helping somebody else. The delusion is about being positive. So if that's what being delusional is, then you know what? We're just going to have to be delusional.
You bet. I'm okay. Then I'm obviously delusional with you. That's
right.
Cool.
Because if you look at the tenets of all the faiths, all of them are really pointing to the same type of activities: loving one another, loving yourself, picking somebody else up. The whole notion of like what you just said, you'll get out of your misery and depression by trying to help somebody else get out of theirs.
And that's the big thing, though. I mean, it's really the connection to herself has to change, and that was a big piece for me because I was living in denial for a very long time, and I'm not talking about, in Egypt denial. I'm talking about my own of not believing that I had a problem or thinking I had control over it, because the idea that I had control over it was even worse. It meant that I had control and I didn't do anything, and then that would make me stupid. And here it's like, I know I'm not stupid, so now I don't want to take responsibility for this, because then it was like I let this happen. How bad is that, right?
So now you're in a vicious cycle, because now you're anxious and stressed out about the fact that you let it happen.
You bet. And people don't, most of us don't want to look at it like that, but quite honestly, it is that way. It's like, you mean I could have changed this? I could have done something different? I mean, who wants to come to terms with the fact that they stayed sick for a very long time because that was the only way of meeting their needs for attention? Nobody wants to admit that. It's just, that's just the reality. But how do you change that is really changing the meaning around it, that you don't have to feel bad about this. It comes to a point where one of my secrets as we go down, acknowledging fear and doubt is one of the first things. And acknowledging this is what happened, but it has to be without blame, and
right.
It has to be without blame, because it's so easy to blame yourself, blame others, and we can always point fingers, but it doesn't move us past it. So getting over that and doing it without blame is important. And then the shame and the blame come in because we don't want to be vulnerable, and that vulnerability puts us back into a place of fear.
Right.
And then that we won't be taken care of, so it threatens who we are. So, and a lot of the stuff we have to do, we have to come to peace with who we are. We have to learn to live in gratitude, and gratitude's a very big thing for me. I mean, I'm very spiritual, and I believe that, there was a time when I couldn't think of anything to be grateful for. And I remember I used to drive, and I was in such a bad place emotionally. Like, I felt like, I've already been abused emotionally and physically and mentally, every way. I mean, and it was real. It wasn't made up. This stuff happened. So it wasn't like I couldn't feel that way. But, here what the challenge is, hurt only hurts the person carrying it.
Right.
And if that's the case, these things that happened to me already passed, but I continued to hurt myself with it by telling myself the same story over and over again.
Do you ever run into a situation where you're trying to help somebody and they say, well, you know what, Lisa, you went through this, but that's nowhere close to as bad as the things that I've gone through. There's no way anyone could ever overcome this. Do you ever run into anybody that says, my story is worse than yours?
You mean I call it one-upmanship.
Exactly. That's it. Again, we call it another name with men, but that's exactly, call it a pissing contest, but yes.
It's like one-upmanship. One of the challenges I had when I started helping people openly, I've been doing it volunteer for years, but openly for the last 4 years, I figured that people would come to me with stories of that, like, oh, you don't know this, or this one was that bad, and all the others. And the one thing I was able to do is I don't let that happen. And what I mean by I don't let it happen, I mean I really don't let it happen, because I don't want to hear someone's story. I tell them that their story is only what they believe happened.
Correct.
It might not have been what happened. And it's because of how our representation system works. It's like I talked about the circus before.
Right.
If you had a good experience there, you're going to see it one way, I'm going to see it another way. That's just your version of the truth, and it doesn't make a difference. What makes the difference is what do you do with it. Now that you know that happened, how do you deal with it from here? What are you going to do about it? You know, because like unless you want to live in misery, then continue to tell your story if it's not fulfilling.
Right. And see that that's the thing there. Like you're constantly, like you're going when people ask you how you doing. All right, you start, and most people when they're asking how you doing, they really don't, because every now and again somebody will shock you, and they will actually really start telling you how they're doing, kind of like you did with the effed up yada yada yada.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But the more you repeat that story, the more embedded it gets in you.
You bet.
And like you said, it's that vicious cycle. You just keep, because my next question is, do you ever run into a situation where the need for attention overrides the need to get better? In other words, I'm loving this attention so much that I really don't want to get better.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can say I lived there for 13 years. I mean, it wasn't conscious, without a doubt.
Right.
It wasn't conscious, but it's where I lived because I didn't know how to get the love I wanted and the attention I wanted any other way. And honestly, it just became a habit. And I don't think I even knew I was doing it to the extreme I was doing it until, you know, it's insidious. We don't realize that we're in it until you can take an outside view. You know, for me, when I'm working with clients, I don't have any of these situations because I take them through a process that makes them see where they're at. And, you know, and not me telling them where they're at. I don't think that would ever work.
Let them come up with it, yes.
Yeah, they have to come to a logical conclusion that what I'm doing isn't working. Because if I tell them, it will not work. I know that. I don't do that.
Right.
But if they come to the conclusion that this is not working for me anymore, then I have hope that I can actually help them walk through it, and they'll want to. But if you turn around and you say to somebody, oh, you're being self-fulfilling, you're this, you're that, it's going to actually turn around and be the opposite of what you think. Like, it's not going to work the way you think it's going to work, because now you just shattered their belief system of what they're holding to be true, and they get a lot of significance from feeling the way they do.
Right.
So, you know, it's kind of like people think, oh, that's the best approach. I disagree. I think the best approach is to let them come to that conclusion by asking quality questions.
Absolutely.
You know? And I think that's the piece that we have to help more people do, is to ask more quality questions of themselves. You know, is this true? And, you know, I love Byron Katie. You'll see. I've actually, my 500 books on tape in the car is nothing. I think I'm up to 700 or something. I'm addicted to education.
I'm
How's
with
that?
you. That's why I'm laughing.
I stopped all the others.
I feel like I found a sister.
You did.
When you share things like this, people actually, some really think you're weird, and I don't mean you. I mean I've had that experience where people think I'm weird. Like, no, I'm not weird. I love this. I mean, because at the same token, people say, I don't understand why you are always so positive, why you're always so happy, why you're always so. Well, I'm going to share some. Right, I'm going to share some more information with the listening audience. While I'm doing that, folks, get on your social media sites, because when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about that whole notion you brought up of gratitude, because that for me is so very important. So I'm going to share some information with the audience, and we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about where gratitude fits into the whole picture.
Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
This is an extended edition of the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. And I'm chatting with the author of From Fine to Fab. And not only has she authored the book, there's also an entire Fine to Fab program that she conducts. And that is none other than Lisa Lieberman-Wang, and I'm sitting here so inspired I don't know what to do, because I feel like I found in Curtis Sliwa's lingo a sister in solidarity. And because I know he's always talking about his brother in solidarity, I feel like I found a sister in solidarity. And I say that because the things that we're talking about, I'm going to tell you firsthand, it is not hooey. It is not hocus pocus. It is not any of that. The belief system that we've been created with by God is absolutely amazing. If you look in the Bible, there's a part in there where God responds to one of them. I don't know if it was Moses or Abraham or who it was. But God says, I am that I am. This goes back to what Lisa was talking about, that whatever you put behind I am is what you are. Whatever you constantly tell yourself that I am is what you will be, or what you are being. So it is critical of what you put behind those words, I am. And right before I shared the information with you, we were talking about gratitude and where that plays into it. Because one of the things, my pastor and I, both of us share this same quote or same feeling of, there's nothing worse than an ingrate. I mean, I don't like to use the word hate. I don't use it often. But if there is one thing that I do hate, is an ingrate. Let's talk a little bit about where gratitude fits into the whole. Even whenever you're going through bad times, still be thankful.
Absolutely. More of things when you're grateful for it versus when you're living in deprivation and you're seeing what you won't have. Scarcity doesn't bring abundance. It's the opposite. So it's when you feel like you're already rich beyond measure, not necessarily financially, but in any means, you'll get even richer. It's, I think, why some of the rich people get richer.
Correct.
For me, I can tell you there was a lot of things that I had to be grateful for, and then there were things I didn't. When I was going through all this stuff, Mark, despite my being sick, I was unbelievably successful, and people don't know that. And there's a lot of people out there that look really great on the outside, but on the inside, they're hurting themselves, and I was one of those people. Whether it be through school, I'm getting scholarships, I'm teaching at IBM, I'm working at IBM, I'm teaching at Arthur Murray,
right.
I have partial scholarships in college, I get out of school, I'm self-sufficient. I was a millionaire at 30 years old.
Wow.
And most people don't do that in a lifetime that
right.
I did as a young person. But I worked for IBM and MCI. MCI became WorldCom, and they went bankrupt.
Yes.
So I was a pauper at 40. So it was like, so how does that happen? And fortunately, I was able to do it again, because I really believe is when you have the tools and the resources and you have the strategy, you can always create wealth again.
Right.
And we did. But the idea is, at the time, I went through a lot of anger and blaming and all the other stuff. Is like, what am I going to be grateful for? I lost everything, or whatever the case is. And then I had to look at what I was saying, because I am a linguist. I deal with language. I had to look. It's like, how did I lose everything? I still have a roof over my head. Do I have debt? Yeah, I have enormous debt. I had $500,000 in debt now, because we had just put in pools and waterfalls and bocce ball courts. We went crazy thinking that we're on the gravy train. We're
Absolutely.
in good shape, right? And we were still living within our means when we did that before the stock market changed. And 9/11 affected us. I had a lot more to be concerned about. My husband lost his contracts. And so we really went from prosperity to desperation. Gratitude has to happen in good times and in bad.
Correct.
And most people only know how to do gratitude when they get things, when it's only good. And I had to learn how to do gratitude in my worst place, in my deepest, darkest places. And I did. And I learned to be grateful for the very smallest things, for the meal that sat in front of me, for the roof I had over my head, for the friend I had, for the parent I had, parents I have, and so forth. But to be grateful for everything, grateful for the sun coming up, to be able to appreciate the look of a rose and the smell, and to see how beautiful that is, and take the fragrance in for that moment. It's living in gratitude that opens up to so many other things. It's very challenging to ever feel bad when you're in gratitude.
Right.
And, there's actually science studies where people who don't smile and don't feel good, that we can actually change their states and the neurotransmitters in their mind, just getting them to smile.
Correct.
Well, in gratitude, we can do that, And we do that every day by letting them face that. So like I said at the beginning, for me, I started with, I'm just grateful I have 2 arms and 2 legs. And
yes.
then, I am grateful I have a roof over my head. It didn't matter to start. Now, one of the things I encourage my clients to do, and I'll tell you, our listeners to do, is every day have a gratitude journal.
Yes.
And I don't mean the same thing. Like, in other words, 5 things a day that you're grateful for. At the end of the day, before you put your head down to go to sleep, write 5 things you're grateful for. And it has to be different every day.
All
you're not
right.
saying the same thing.
Correct.
And, I do a lot of things. I do a process called the gratitude flood. And it's through a meditation that we're able to do it. And I use it as a self-hypnotic state I can put myself into. But what's really great about it is I'll actually use it to put myself to sleep at night. And the cool thing is I never finish because I fall asleep. So I always wake up more grateful, right?
That's right.
I got more to be grateful for. And you can't feel bad when you're in gratitude. It's just impossible.
I mean, I'm sitting here again. It's just like I've gone through Rhonda Burns with The Secret and all these things. We're saying the same things. If more people would just embrace, because it's all connected. I mean, because some people say, well, if you're into that, does that mean you're not into the Bible? They're all saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're all saying, as you believe, ask not because you have not. You receive what you release. So it's all in there. It's all connected. It's a mindset. It's a way of life. It's a way of thinking that could take you out of a negative way of life into a more positive way of life, because it really is. There is the reason I sat here and I watched the whole coverage of the Pope in New York, and to hear every time the anchor or whoever, the reporter, would ask people, well, what was it like? What do you feel? I mean, because it's literally, you're talking about the Pope going by within seconds, and people are just like, oh, I got this feeling. If we could capture that feeling that these people are trying to describe in just about everything that we do, things would come out so much better. Because like you were saying a couple of minutes ago in terms of, and this is what people don't get, scarcity brings on more scarcity. That whenever you're dealing from a lack attitude, you get more lack.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't really understand it. Yeah, but Mark, I really don't have this stuff. Okay.
Right, and a lot of people might not. They might not have the money they want now.
Right, now. That's the key word, now.
Right, but in living in that mindset of I don't have, again, unconscious mind wants you to be right. It doesn't know the difference fact and fiction, and it thinks, okay, then you don't want to have money, and it makes sure that your actions follow. And the piece you have to do is live in abundance. And it's not saying I'm a millionaire when you're not. It's saying that money comes to me freely.
Right.
That I live in abundance, that I'm capable of great things,
right,
that I can do this, and all those other things. As a matter of fact, Mark, I have to share, I have another appointment coming up. I don't want to leave you, but
No, I understand, because we've actually, I'm grateful that we went this long. So, but I tell you what, while we have talk about the event you have coming up next week, then promote that.
Oh, I'd love to. So, if you're in the New Jersey area, you're going to want to come join us in Fairfield, New Jersey, at the American Red Cross. Go to 7 Secrets to Fabulous. It's the number 7. This is for men and for women. Bring your family, especially if some of them are your challenged family that you want to be even happier. Bring them along. That way you're making sure you're influencing your environment, not just yourself. But it's 7secretstofabulous.com, and it is a transformational journey to a happier you. We're going to be giving you practical strategies to overcome self-sabotage, ways to interrupt patterns, giving you different tools to understand how your physical health is affected by your emotional health. We have a STEM transformation expert who's going to be coming and joining us and teaching us how to get into our feminine essence to get to be even stronger. I think a lot of women who have had challenges around sexuality need to understand that the very thing that they think is not helping them is an asset to them, and a lot of women have become very masculine over the years. And I think that we can help them to understand that femininity doesn't have to be hidden or ashamed of, but to learn to love themselves where they're at is really important. We also there's actually 5 amazing speakers going to be there, not just me. I'll be presenting the 7 Secrets to Fab and how to break through the trance and uncover unconscious patterns and stop waiting for perfection. We're going to have an expert talking about feminine and masculine communication and why men don't understand us and why women don't understand men. We'll fix some of that. And some of it, not all. Mark,
That's
hope you Mark, you have to come. You need to be coming here. Come as my guest.
Okay, and that's in Fairfield?
In Fairfield, yes.
That's not far from me. Okay, I will be in touch with you in terms of addresses and times and all of that.
Okay, and even the transformation cycle and modeling, we're going to have an incredible turnaround expert teaching that, and we have a doctor who's also been celebrated through CBS, ABC, and Channel 2 and other things that will be teaching about our emotional and physical health. So there'll be a lot of great things that we'll be learning about. And the best part is that it's not just a sit-down, listen type of thing. It's more of an experimental. We're going to be getting you up and moving and doing things, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I will be in touch with you on LinkedIn. As a matter of fact, if you go on LinkedIn, you'll probably see a bunch of my posts, a bunch of the quotes you made this morning.
Awesome.
So I know you have another appointment. I'm not going to hold you. I'll let you give the website again. I know it's LisaLieberman-Wang.com, but any other websites? And the other thing is, you said you know Tony Robbins. If you ever talk to Tony, I'd love to get him on the show. If he can on the phone just like you're doing, wherever he is in the world.
I'll be seeing him in December.
Well, if he wants to do the show, he has an open invitation.
I don't blame you. It's a good offer. And to let everybody know, you can go to findtofab.com, FINETOFAB.com is our other site to learn more about the programs we offer at Find to Fab, and also 7 Secrets to Fabulous is the event we have. This event is normally an $800 a day, but I'm going to let you know for your listeners, if they decide that this is something that they want to participate in, we have a pre-registration special specifically because I knew I was doing this call. We're going to be on the show, and we have a pre-registration special for only $97.
Okay, there you go. So if you heard her on the show and you let her know that, you got a discount rate.
Absolutely. You just go onto the site, and it's set up there for you already, okay?
All right.
Okay.
Well, I thank you so much for rising early to speak with us. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And I will be in touch with you on LinkedIn or email over the week to get everything together for next week, as well as the recorded link. I'll get that to you. But, Lisa, I wish you absolutely nothing but the best, and I know nothing but the best is coming based on our talk and your mindset.
Absolutely, Mark. And it's been a total pleasure being here, and I want to thank you and the listeners for being present and really to put something into action for yourself today. The very smallest thing will be the biggest thing later, so take the first step.
All right. Have a wonderfully blessed day, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Mark. So long.
Take care now.